Welcome to the Healers Café, conversations on health and healing with Dr. Manon.
So welcome to the Healers Cafe, and today I have with me Anna Kowalska, and she is a hand analyst, and she guides women to discover their unique soul purpose and spiritual gifts so that they can live their fullest potential, be on purpose, and be prosperous. So you're also a transformation mentor.
Mm-hmm.
And I was on your podcast.
Yes.
We had such a fabulous time. I wanted to invite you and find out much more about what gets you excited,
Mm-hmm.
what started this whole thing. How did you go into the really? I think that's the general first question I have for you.
Yeah, good question. I didn't grow up in an environment that would give me an exposure to any kind of a healing art background. I grew up in Poland during communism. You learn how to be practical. I definitely learned very quickly how to fit in the box, how to follow instructions. And then I came to America and I created a life, which I definitely am happy to go into more. I created a life that just didn't feel okay, didn't feel good actually at all. And slowly, although not at all, I was starting to being introduced to healing modalities and being introduced to yoga and being introduced to meditation. And again, it wasn't something that I was ever familiar with. And in my environment, none of the people I grew up with talk about the things that I that I talk about, right? And then I really sometimes I think I'm like, did it just find me? Did it just find me because I was at the point where I wasn't willing to live the kind of life I was living that I was taught to live. Mm-hmm. So the solution has presented itself, and there were layers of it. So I learned thing by thing by thing. I never thought that someday I would be using these modalities, working with people.
Interesting. So it sounds like it's like when you got to the States, you created a life, but
Mm-hmm.
it's the experience of that life that made you kind of wake up and realize that you're not living the life you want. So what's that process? How did that work for you?
Yeah, so I followed the rules, go to school, get a job. I was bitten by entrepreneurial bug pretty early on, but I still followed the corporate structure, the corporate route. So I was about to get married. We had a multi-million-dollar business, houses, cars, dogs, beautiful life planned out. I was about to get married in a castle, storybook life on paper, right? Inside, not at all. I was frustrated. I was never diagnosed with depression, but I'm pretty sure that I was getting pretty close. And I'm like, how is this possible that my life could look so perfect on the outside? And people envy me because they tell me all the time, wow, your life is so great. And I wish I had your life and everything is so good. I'm supposed to feel good about everything that I've created. And I'm supposed to feel good about everything that I have. People in my life, the man I'm about to marry, yet happiness is nowhere in my experience of what life should feel like. Right? I really started to feel like I was being imprisoned by it. Like all of a sudden, I was becoming somebody that I didn't know how to be. And it just felt very uncomfortable. More than anything, I became really angry, frustrated, angry. And one day, just a few months before the wedding, I had an experience of, well, now I know what to call it, but at the time I didn't. It was my wings on my back that let me know they're there. So what it felt like was like my back being really tight and something being tied on my back with a rope. And I knew that sensation. I'm like, there is a rope tying something on my back, right? But I had no idea what it was. And I knew that that feeling was a signal for me to go in a different direction, because direction I am about to go to is not going to take me where I am supposed to go from my higher self perspective.
Very interesting. Yeah, no, that's it's interesting that you experienced it like a symbol, literally in your, like, well, you had to pay attention,
Yeah.
right? Because you could have
Yeah.
just taken painkillers and hope it would go away. So there was something that made you decide to listen to the body, and that also made you, did you actually envision wings or did you?
No.
No. So you were feeling like a rope.
Yeah.
And then how did, yeah, explain that further, because I mean, that's one of the things I help people with, is also understanding the metaphors and the symbols that we experience in our journey, right? And to me, we're constantly in a healing journey. So
Yes.
it's very hard to decide when that ends, you know.
Yeah.
But so tell me more, if you don't mind. So let us go back there, and what was happening.
Yeah, so I'll tell you very specifically, because the moment is very clear in my mind. We were living in a beautiful $2 million house, and we were renovating piece by piece. We were about to renovate the master suite. So we were in a bed. My soon-to-be husband and I were in a bathroom, and he handed me over a toothbrush. And I don't know what it was about the toothbrush. And since then, I'm speculating that it's so symbolic. You know, when you with somebody, you have toothbrushes together, and a toothbrush is like symbolic. When you live somewhere, that's where your toothbrush stays. He handed me a toothbrush, and all of a sudden, I reached my hand out, and something on my back just went really tight. And I know what the stress feels like, right? Like when your shoulder blades are really tight. I know what it feels like. That wasn't it. I literally felt like somebody took a rope, and I felt the pieces of rope touching my back. Now, in that moment, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm about to get tied up. I'm about to get tied up. Because there is this rope, right? And against my back, what's going on? And spirituality wasn't part of my experience yet. Symbolism wasn't part of my experience. So I really didn't know what to think about it. I was a little bit into dreams, so I could interpret dreams, but this wasn't a dream. I was awake, right? Well, I guess depends how you look at it.
Yeah, I get what you mean.
So in that moment, I was like, I'm about to get tied up. I have to get out. And so that's the only thing I knew in the moment. I have to get out. I knew that. It took me a few more months. I didn't say anything to him. I didn't say, I'm about to get tied up. I have to get out. I took the toothbrush and we continued. But I knew in that moment that this was over. And I knew that I had to take a different path. Now, later on, as I started to get into spirituality and start believing in angels, I grew up Catholic, so angels were the little cherubs, you know, on a dome of a church.
Right.
When I started to get into spirituality and symbolism and start paying attention to there is something else to life, all of a sudden I had a knowing. I'm like, and I don't know where it came from either, but I had a knowing. Those were my wings. I just knew those were my wings. And my wings were about to get tighter. They were already tied up. They were about to get tighter with a knot that I probably wouldn't be able to take off. And from my upbringing, I know that it would be very difficult for me to go through a divorce if I actually went through with the marriage.
Mm-hmm.
So that's probably what happened. And I never actually said it this way to anybody, but I'm like, yeah, the divorce would have been unacceptable.
Right. Yeah. So it was like now or not.
Yes, now or not. And it took me a few months, and I did get out of the relationship. And speaking of numbing out, because you said I could have taken a pill, I got into drinking alcohol because I took the step, but then after the step, there is this void. And you're getting stripped of everything. I mean, everything was tied up. My whole life was tied up into that relationship. And I know you have, I don't know how closely your story is tied into everything had to be stripped away when you left the relationship?
No, just share yours.
Okay.
But I get it.
Yeah.
I'm hearing you.
Yeah, everything just, I mean, my businesses, my houses, my dogs, my friends, my social life, everything.
Wow.
All of a sudden I had to plug myself out. Yet we lived in a small community. So I plugged myself out, but I was still surrounded by all the same people, but now be in a different role. And I started to drink alcohol.
Yeah.
And when I drank alcohol to numb out, it started to really impact my experience of life and my effectiveness. And that's actually, interestingly, when my hormonal imbalance kicked in.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. So I was born with a hormonal imbalance. It's genetics. I had some symptoms, but not too much. And when I started to drink drastically, my hormonal imbalance started to really kick in, the symptoms of it. And it's what eventually made me stop drinking and get into health and nutrition and mindfulness. My body told me enough.
Yeah. I was listening to your story and I was like, because you saw it very much like ropes, and that was, so you had a visual of ropes, right? Yeah, and it's interesting because I was thinking as you're speaking, I'm seeing this caterpillar.
Wow.
That is like you're trying to get out because the caterpillar becomes a butterfly but doesn't know it.
Right.
When they're in the caterpillar life,
Yeah.
but it's like for you and the ropes are the symbols because it felt like it tied you down and there were no wings, there was no way to get out but to get out. But again, without going into deep personal life or anything, because that's not the purpose here.
Yes.
I'm not trying to do therapy here. I'm just curious though, like how did you, like, that's your process of stepping out, knowing, then not having the support, so drinking, and then waking up to like, oh my god, this can't go on and I gotta shift it, right? But what was it like for your partner? How were you able to share this or not share this, and what has happened after all these years?
Yeah, I wasn't able to share it. I think in the moment I couldn't really explain
what was
going on. Yeah, I really couldn't explain. I grew up in a very traditional family, in a very traditional environment. You get married, you have kids. That's what happens in life, right? And I love my mom very dearly, but when I was breaking up that relationship, she said, why don't you have a child? Child sometimes fixes something.
Right. And that's so often, like, that was told so often. Yeah. Or a pet.
Or a pet, yeah. We already had 2 dogs, so.
Okay, you got limits there. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, crazy.
Yeah, so in my worldview at the time, I really didn't know what was going on. I mean, to a degree, now that I think about it, I did think there was something wrong with me, because why was I rejecting such a perfect life? I mean, so like I said, I grew up in Poland, in a communist country. We weren't poor, but it's not like we were a rich family, right? So coming to America, we came back down to nothing. I mean, we each came with a suitcase, and we had a family here, but my parents started from the ground up again. So all of a sudden I'm in this relationship that has given me a space to know myself as somebody who can have these things. And I'm rejecting all of it. Like, who am I to reject this man who truly, he did love me very much. And seemingly we had a great relationship. Again, 2 dogs, sports cars, house in Florida, house on Long Island. There's got to be something wrong with me to say this is not going to work, right? In my worldview. So I really couldn't have a conversation at a time, because at the time, I wasn't, at the time, the way I saw it, and the only way I could explain it was that I was rejecting him.
Right.
I couldn't reject the worldview I had. The only thing that wasn't right was the relationship. Right? So there was no conversation. And we did go for 7 years. We went back and forth, figuring out where did we go wrong? And we would date for a while and break up and date for a while. And then eventually we just said, this is it. We could no longer go on. And it was soon after I stopped drinking that I got the clarity, and I said, okay, this has to end for me to be able to go on. And when it did, I was able to start seeing things differently. And I went to nutrition school, holistic nutrition school, to learn how to take care of myself. Yeah. And that was the first way that I actually started to take care of myself properly, which is learn how to feed myself good food.
Wow.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. It's just a fascinating, everyone's path to, to consciousness, really,
Yeah.
Yeah, that's, and so are you in, do you ever talk? Did you end it in was there acceptance and peace by the end?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
There were several conversations since then, and it's only because I have done the work to pick up the phone and say, this is what happened, this is what I made it mean.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. What I made it mean. Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. Because objectively, nothing is ever wrong. It's what is, and it's like it is always what we make things mean,
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes, sometimes you shift.
Yes.
You move, and that's also not wrong. So it's very interesting, how that all happens. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yes. And I don't regret a moment looking backwards. I'm like looking back at what happened and decisions I've made, and some parts of it I wish I did differently. And even for the sake of people around me, not even for me. But because of where I am right now, I am extremely grateful for all those experiences. Yeah.
So you went into nutrition to look after yourself because that information isn't always completely out there, and you were interested in it. And then what led you to the whole hand? What is that called?
It's scientific hand analysis.
That's what it is. Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
You were saying that. Yeah. So what led you there?
So it's interesting. When that relationship ended, I went on a streak. The first ending, the one when I actually called off the marriage. I went on a streak of trying somebody else to tell me what's going to happen with my life. So psychics, intuitives, card readers, leaf readers, toe readers, breath readers, you pick it. It became my second job. My weekends were filled with search from the outside for somebody to tell me, what is it that my life is about? And more importantly, when will I get married? Because remember, my worldview at the time was that this had to happen. It's just, this is not the right person, clearly. So when is the right person going to come in? Like that was my perspective at the time. And I remember, I think about 6 months into it, I started to realize that I was being fed things that I necessarily didn't believe, but I was taking on. So I swore off any kind of modalities that would tell me anything about me, until 8 years ago now, a friend of mine told me. I was already along the journey. I was already a coach and a practitioner, and I was still seeking something. There was still something missing. And a friend of mine told me, why don't you look into scientific hand analysis? And I first said no because of my experience years back. And she said, no, it's a little bit different. There is actually science to it. So there is a man named Richard Unger who created the system. He began back in the 60s, 1960. He was given an insight to look into it. And he put palmistry together with science about human personalities and everything he could dig up about what hands really mean. And apparently, hands were already used as a tool to direct young men, because women weren't directed at the time, in like 1500s into their proper profession. So he dug up all the information and he started to research. He read people's hands, analyzed them, and then put them into the system. And if they met a satisfactory, repeated evidence that this is exactly what this means for somebody's experience, he would make it a rule. So now there is a system behind it, and there are many of us using it, proving constantly that what he saw was actually, or unable to prove is actually true. So what happened for me is I looked it up and I said, okay, it's scientific, which means it's repeatable and teachable. I can actually my brain can get behind it. And it's tangible because it's in my hands. So I had my hands analyzed, and I am very familiar with all personality tests out there. None of them ever truly grasped who I was.
Hi, this is a small commercial break, and for you to let me know that you're enjoying these conversations, please go 1, to subscribe to my podcast, number 2, write a review, because if you write a review on iTunes, more people know about this and I can help spread the work, my work, but the work of everyone else I'm interviewing. And number 3, please sign up to my tips for your healing journey. And you can do that under www.drmanonbolliger.com/tips. Thank you.
And my theory on that is they're great and they're useful, but I am the person who's answering the questions. So however I see myself in a moment, or whatever results I want to get, confirm or not, that's how I will answer the question. It's very subjective, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, I often play with those when I feel like it, and I'm just like, well, I already know what type I am, it's like, duh, it's
right.
Yeah,
right.
It's very subjective, and it's like, then how you want to see yourself isn't necessarily how you really are. But anyway, I'll let you finish.
Absolutely true. And I think especially for women, we change within a month. Our hormones shift, our emotions shift. If I had a good day, I will answer one way because I feel really good about myself. But if I woke up that morning and I don't feel good because I had a fight with my partner, or somebody told me that I suck at what I do, never happens, but I have a certain perspective of myself, right? Like if something didn't work that I was trying to do, I will answer that question very differently on the day when I feel good about myself versus not, period. So in hand analysis, the woman who did the analysis for me was able to pull out very few specific things about who I am, not even about what I do or my future or specific things that have happened. There were traits of my personality. There were certain innate talents that I knew I had that I never ever spoke about or used. But once in a while, I would become aware of them. It was a glimpse, and then I would suppress it. When she pulled it out and she said, this is this, and this, like, this is who you are. I just had this, first of all, I cried on a spot. I couldn't even talk. I choked out. I said, I've known this my whole entire life. Why did nobody ever tell me that this is who I am? That was my first place I went to as a kid. I'm like, I was already that. Why did nobody ever tell me or direct me in a direction to grow that potential and talent, right? So I followed who I was in a hand analysis for several years. And eventually it led me to a point where I was in a room with the teacher of the system. And she said, okay, anybody who wants to come learn with me, I will give you an opportunity. And my whole body, I had chills and fire all at the same time.
Wow. Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. And I knew I had to follow it.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, but that's that, it just shows that inner knowing, and we so deny it. We're taught to, well, that's just a feeling. Well, what about that? Right? Or it's like, part of it is distinguishing if it's a fear or if it's a deeper, like, intuitive insight, and in my training, I kind of go through that. I'd be very curious. How do you know that it's a fear compared to an inner knowing, intuitive knowing? Because you seem to have no problem following it. How do you know it's not that other voice?
So good distinction, because you just said that other voice, right? It's a voice when it's a fear. It's in my head. I actually feel it in my head. and it was a journey for me to really, because I had the same question. How do I know? Is this me being afraid of this? I mean, I was afraid of this my whole life, and I've gathered evidence that this is not who I am when I really was that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And how do I know that this is really like the truth?
Mm-hmm.
And it was a journey for sure. And there were many times when I didn't get it right. But at this point, it is really a difference between it's in my body or it's in my head. And even the fear, if I feel the fear in my body, I will like, because it's a sensation, right?
Mm-hmm.
I will still ask, is this a story that I'm responding to right now? Something that I have, my brain is wired to spot and run away from?
Right. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Like it's part of, it could be your subconscious programming or,
Right.
whatever that you may not be aware of,
Absolutely. So I'll still ask. And I don't know if we have, I don't know, this is my theory right now. I don't know if we truly, fully ever know 100%, because there are so many stories we have in our mind.
Mm-hmm.
We don't ever know, right? Like, are we at the end of the stories? Like, is this the last story that doesn't serve me, that I made up, that I'm clearing out right now?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. No, so I don't know. I agree. I don't say it's in my head because I feel like I feel like a thought is almost outside. It's like a thought I project out, and I look at, if it doesn't, what my feeling about this is, if I'm not happy with the thought,
Mm-hmm.
if I don't feel good, then it's probably a lie.
Yeah. Yeah.
And therefore it could be a fear, it could be whatever it is. And so what I've learned or trained myself to do
Mm-hmm.
is to put those thoughts in a little cloud,
Yeah.
very kindly,
Mm-hmm.
and blow it away. It sounds insane,
But it works, right?
but it works, because it's a pattern interrupt, for one.
Mm-hmm.
And I literally put it in a cloud, and the cloud is puffy and floats, and I can actually visualize this, and it's interesting because the rest is, like, for example, when I decided that well, actually, after I got my hand read, which blew my mind away entirely, because I think I've done like you. I've done, you know every once in a while you go into a crisis and you go,
Yes.
somebody tell me what to do. Like, what's my horoscope today? What's this? What's that? Whatever. Just tell me. Just
Yes.
tell me.
Mm-hmm.
So I totally understand that. And then the rest of them, back to being more clear and understanding that it
Mm-hmm.
is from within.
Yeah.
And then anyway, but I did go see this person from Germany, and he he didn't know who I was. He didn't know anything about me. Like, and I made sure that the person organizing this would not let them know. And then
Mm-hmm.
I also invited quite a few of my patients,
Mm-hmm.
just, to come into this space. And anyway, and when he read my hand, he said, "Oh, you're a healer." It's like, okay, well, yes, that's totally true. I didn't confirm. I just listened to him.
Yeah.
And he said, "You're a speaker." And that was interesting because I always felt like, when I was young, I
Mm-hmm.
would put on plays, I would do all kinds of things. And then as I became, an adult, a lot of that just got thrown away and not really,
Yeah.
acted upon. Though I did put a play together. So I'd come to think I didn't completely suppress it, but that was the last kind of thing of that was 21, and I'm well older than that, almost 60 now, and it was amazing. That thought, that when he said it, true in my body, like you said, it's like, oh, it's peace for a moment, huh?
Mm-hmm.
And then it was like, oh my God, how am I gonna be good at this? How am I gonna do this? How am I, but that is it's a very different thought and
Mm-hmm.
fear than the fear that comes kind of seemingly from the outside. That's like a recorded thing. It's like, even though you have fear, you know it's right.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, and you know it in your body. So it's interesting that you share that, because that's very much how I try and explain it. And, you know, a lot of people have come to understand that difference. And it's subtle, but not, it gets less subtle, like you say, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, with practice, it becomes really, it becomes distinct. Yeah, subtly, but still it becomes distinct.
Exactly. Yeah. 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 It's anything you put your attention to, really, you know, you can start seeing it
Yeah.
better
Mm-hmm.
because you're focused on it, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Ah,
Yeah. Yeah.
interesting. So now, so now what do you do?
So now I use the tool that gave me my freedom, right? Because it freed it's probably around the time is when I got that visual of my wings or the butterfly opening up, right? Like I understood it, right? Because part of my experience in life and one of my values based on my hands, confirmed by my hands, is freedom.
Okay.
Right? So it totally made sense that being tied up would have been, you know, deathly scary, right? I'm
Right.
about to die.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So now I use this tool. I use scientific hand analysis, and there is something about it that's like that I am very connected to.
Mhm.
I don't know if I've done it in prior lifetimes. There is something that I'm very connected to it as a modality. I use other systems like human design and gene keys and other systems like that are helping me pinpoint to people, confirm to people who they are, who they have suppressed. They really came here to be, right?
Mhm.
But something about hand analysis, maybe it's the tangible aspect. You can actually touch the lines on your hands and you can touch the places where your soul left a little message for you, right?
Mm. Have you ever done that to, or help or read somebody's hand, for example, and they're like, no, that's not, I don't see that, or nope,
Yep.
I didn't get married 3 times, or whatever the story is.
So yeah, it has happened a couple times. And I don't use hand analysis to like tell them, okay, you're married or you're not married. I can tell them what would be, like if they tell me, what about a relationship? I can say, well, you would be happier in a relationship than by yourself because of the way your heartline shows me. Your heartline shows me as somebody who's happier being in a relationship than not, right?
Mhm.
So it's about the way that we are. And I did have twice somebody completely refuse everything I said to them. And the reason for that was, in hand analysis is like the world we live in where there is a polarity. So for abundance, there exists lack.
Mm.
There is light, there's got to be darkness.
Mhm.
So the way we are meant to be, there is the other side, right? Like the way that will not feel good if we are. So for example, if we are here to be in a spotlight and seen for our gifts, on the other side, there is a fear of rejection, right? And most people, if they are searching and not feeling good about who they are or about their life, is because they are in this other part that doesn't feel good. So when I talk to somebody who has been shut down from before they were even came out of their mom's womb, right? They were shut down. Their mom was in fear for life and fear of rejection. I'm just going to use that thread. And they have taken that on, right?
Mm.
Energetically have taken that on from a very first moment. They were living in a fear of rejection. They never ever experienced being seen for who they are and express themselves and being appreciated for it. And if I tell them you came here to be seen, expressed,
Mhm.
and applauded for it, appreciated for it, that will be a very foreign experience to them.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
then I will say to them, are you familiar with the fear of rejection? They're like, 100%.
Right. Okay. Yeah, yeah. Makes
Yeah.
sense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, so it's not it doesn't determine what you will be or what you do, your hand, right? It's really more like a map if you
Yes.
choose to read it, right? So if you are confused or unsure, then you could, you could potentially see what this brings up, of which you either dance with or kind of go no, because you're not, it doesn't make you do a thing or another. It
No.
just illuminates
Mhm.
where there might be potential
Yes.
to be gained, or growth to be had, or whatever it is, right?
Right. Yes.
Mhm.
And if whoever it is, and I tell them they're, this is the experience you wanted to have of a leadership, you wanted to know what it's like to be a leader. And the person says, I think I'm okay with my life the way it is. It's their choice.
Right. Yeah. Well,
Right.
sometimes too, like, yeah, you have to, because I remember when I was told this, I had this feeling like, oh, you know, this this is me, right? It
Mm-hmm.
felt real, but I couldn't see where I would start.
Mm-hmm.
I had no idea, like, what, I'm fully in my practice. I'm teaching, so
Yeah.
that's not
Yes.
speaking. It's speaking, but it's not like I knew it wasn't the same resonance of
Yes. There you go.
feeling that when he read my hand,
Yeah.
he said I would be speaking, and it's
Yeah.
like, oh my goodness gracious, what do I need to do? And and so I did a lot of visualizations, and then sat with it, and it's like, it's not that, it's kind of funny, but it's like, because it became part of my consciousness that this could be a thing that I may end up doing, it's like on my radar, right?
Yeah.
So I remember there's a training that it was originally for writing, because I'm writing my second book now, and and then it had a part you could tag the public speaking piece, and I kind of went like, oh gosh, is this like, first of all, it's an offer, so it's, it's a
Mm-hmm.
sale, and it's like, oh my gosh, and I'm so susceptible to anything that potentially is aligned. It's like, oh, okay, just breathe through this, and at the end it's like, this feels right. And what was incredible is, so I said yes, yeah, and then um, very shortly after, I was asked to be on a TEDx talk. And it was like, oh, okay, thank God. Thank God I said yes,
Yes.
because it's like, oh gosh, I get the training,
Mm-hmm.
And then life became interesting, because with the COVID-19, the TED talk was May 9th, which is canceled now, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's
Yes.
been postponed.
Uh-huh.
We'll see what happens, but it's been a very interesting introspective dance with this, like, where on one level everything seems incredibly aligned,
Yeah.
and there's twists, right? So it's like,
Yes.
that's where the mind does the story, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the original yes was felt,
Right. Right.
and then
Because
things go up, right? So
right. And people will take that COVID-19 and cancellation of that means maybe that's not what I should be doing, right? But that's not that at all,
right.
right? Because your original yes was still very much a yes,
Yeah, and
right?
therefore I launched the podcast, because I realized, like, oh my gosh, I did a few just to see, it's like, oh, okay, this is, so it's interesting. It's like, if you put it out there,
Mm-hmm.
you dance with it, a bit like you explained, in your life, you didn't quite know, you did nutrition, you did this, but eventually, if you're
Yes.
dancing in the field,
Mm-hmm.
something says, this is for you, and you know it. There's no doubt, right?
Right. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And then, it's not like it wasn't challenging for me to bring it into my work and make it part of what I do, because again, my upbringing still, right? It's
Yeah.
not okay. I mean, what are you all of a sudden reading hands?
Right, oh, for sure. That's where you have clouds. See, but that's a thought, right? It
Mm-hmm.
really is a thought. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, so listen, our time is strangely up, but is there a last something you would like to share with everyone?
Yes, I would. The journey of getting to know yourself truly is a journey of healing. Because I know you're speaking, it's a healer's cafe.
Yeah.
I haven't found anything in my life more rewarding than going through different layers of who I am and healing different parts. I mean, there is nothing more fascinating to me than having conversations about healing journeys with people. And I think where we are right now is our collective healing journey.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Yeah. And I think there are a lot of people who are looking for support from those who have gone before, your audience, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is why I am such a huge stand for people who have any kind of healing gifts, modalities, must stand up, raise hands, speak, let the rest of the world know, come this way.
Mm-hmm.
There is something I can help you with because I know how you feel right now.
Yeah. It really is the time for healers. I mean, it's incredible. And self-identified healers, that's what, because the thing is, as you know, once you go into the healing, you know you're not the healer. It's the person, right? Like, so it's kind of a myth, but everyone relates to the Healers Cafe because on some level that's how we got in. We just recognize something, and then we realize the myth about it. But we're definitely in a world right now that is going to need lots of healing. So
yes. So everybody who recognizes there's something about themselves in the category of healing must all hands on deck.
Yeah, exactly.
So thank you for the work you do.
Well, thank you for also sharing with me what you do, because the idea, there isn't the one thing. It's the thing that resonates, and that's my also part of the idea with the Healers Cafe is, I've had so many, psychiatrists, dentists, surgeons, naturopaths, homeopaths, Bowen therapists, my gosh, all kinds of modalities that I'm not as familiar with, but I'm very open to understand the path, because I do think that all these things show up at the right moment for the right people, and it's part of our evolution. Anyway, we need to make that 40 minutes. So thank you so much for being here.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us at the Healers Cafe with Dr. Manon. For more information, go to drmanonbolliger.com.